Hello and welcome to Love Fools with me, your host, Terri Shield, where we are hopelessly devoted to exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you by Love School, where we explore loving self, others, and everything. Join us there for deeper exploration at www.loveschool.uk. Now for today's episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Love Fools. I am dead excited because today I'm here with Julie Brown. I can't help it, right? I keep thinking, our very own Boundaries Brown. If you don't know who Brene Brown is, right, go and do some research on Brene Brown. But don't worry, because we've got Julie. And Julie's better than Brene. No offense, Brene, because she's American and you're Northern.
I am. And I love Brene Brown, yeah.
Yeah,
I've done some of the training
awesome.
as well.
Sorry, I didn't mean any offense to Brene. Bigging you up, Julie. How are you doing? You all right?
I am well. I'm well. How are you?
Yes, I'm well too. Thank you. I'm super excited to have you here. So thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
You have got loads going on. Do you want to introduce yourself to people and tell people what you do and all the amazing things you're doing in the world?
Right. I don't fit into a box. I think that's where I start with. I am a coach. I work with adults. I work with children. I wear many different hats, as you know, Terry. It's like, what hats Jules got on today? So I have a company called Our Mental Health Rocks. And Our Mental Health Rocks ethos is nobody is broken. Now that's a very strong theme and it goes through everything and everybody that I work with. None of you can't break a human being, right? Yes, we have experiences that we like and that we don't like, but or that we don't want to feel and that we do, but none of us you can't break a person. How can you break a person, right? So that ethos and we've got curriculums in schools, we've got ambassadors that go out and share this in their own life, in their own private practices. And we've got ambassadors that just share it with their families and local communities. So we've got lots of people doing that. I am also a boundaries coach. I primarily work with boundaries.
Yes.
And that's how we got talking a lot more around about the
Julie's my boundaries coach. Julie keeps me in check when I need to check in with my boundaries.
And we all do, right? Because we can all second guess ourselves and second guess the boundaries and second guess like what's going on in the world and feeling a bit crazy sometimes. So it's always nice to have somebody that we can just go, can I just run this by you a little bit? And someone that's going to be straight talking and just tell you how it is with your understanding that you're never broken behind it and with 100% your back. So that's some of what I do. And I'm also, I work with people with anxiety. I have a 3-week program from anxiety to wellbeing that I co-run. And that's literally got 65 people waiting to come and join next week because I've opened the doors for free. Next week, just for the last time. I opened it up for free for a few weeks ago and it went really well. So let's do it again. And I'm looking and seeing the numbers like growing, thinking, people who are in there are going to be thinking, what's just happened? So far, there's people running in that. So yeah, that's some of what I do, and I still do more as well.
Yeah, you got multifaceted, I can't even say it, multifaceted. But that's the way to be, I think, sometimes, because I don't fit in a box either. You know that.
I do.
And fitting in a box is fully enough, right? Considering you talk about boundaries. And that is something that I really had to think about when I was exploring boundaries. It's not really a secret. I'm quite public about my own journey. I had to think of boundary as like a fixed, like a fence or a box, like literally like this is my box, because turns out I didn't really have many, or I didn't really have a good concept of it. So considering I say I don't fit in a box, I actually created a box. And you help people create them boxes to keep them well and safe and healthy and happy.
I help people understand that it's okay. In fact, it's actually essential to live a balanced life to have boundaries.
Yeah.
That's it. And the boundaries come in different categories. They come in the totally non-negotiables. They come in the let's discuss this and listen to each other's views and see what's going on. So we've got our softer boundaries and we've got our absolutely hard nose and this is not what's happening. And we also have to, and this is one of the reasons a lot of people don't put boundaries in, we also have to understand that putting a boundary in isn't going to please everybody else. And people will enter and leave your life when you actually start to realize that you can have boundaries. And you've got to understand that other people also have their choices as well. So it's looking at the bigger picture. It's not, boundaries get a really bad reputation. And actually, they don't need to have that bad reputation, because a boundary isn't just like being a bitch, right? A boundary isn't just like not letting anybody do anything and only wanting something your way. Boundaries much deeper than that. It's coming in and knowing yourself. And this is a perfect topic for this
Yeah, I was
because
just
it's
gonna
about
say,
loving yourself and accepting yourself and knowing that a boundary is the ultimate self-love, really, isn't it?
yeah,
So
I was
yeah,
that was the question that was brewing. I was just gonna say, well, do you think a boundary is more about loving yourself or loving other people, or is it both?
it can be both, because if you want to have a relationship with somebody and that relationship's not going well, more often than not, it's because there's miscommunication and there's miscommunication around what's important to you, why it's important to you, and the same with the other person. So you have a boundary, you discuss it, you put it out there, and you explain. There's nothing you can't explain to a person when you say it the right way, right? We have a conversation. If somebody cares about you, and even if they don't understand your boundary, if they understand why it's important to you, they're going to work with you, right? If they don't, that's what I say. Some people will not stay in your life, but those are the people that usually weren't adding value to your life anyway.
Mhm.
And quite often from a fear-based scarcity place, you don't want to look at that because you think you need to hold on to people. And actually having boundaries is about having self-worth, having self-love, having self-understanding, having self-knowledge, and about trusting in yourself.
Yeah, because I think I mean, about when you look at love, right, in general, and this is a bit why I love doing love feels, because I'm unpacking it, and you think love is like this one thing, and it's dead easy, straightforward, and you take whatever you get, and it just flows, and you keep it. You keep it when you've got it, and then, but actually, there's so much more to it, isn't it? Like self love can mean that you have less interaction with people,
Mhm.
depending on who you are
Yeah,
and what love means
100%.
to you. And then, how do you, if somebody's just like starting to get this concept around self love, right?
Mhm,
Especially with your angle of you can't be broken, great mental health and boundaries, right? Because
mhm.
that's how I know you. How does that how does that fit in with the self love um idea? If somebody's never even thought about loving themselves, because we always assume love
Mhm,
is about a romantic partner or kids
mhm, mhm.
or family or something, don't we? How does that relate to yourself that works then with others?
So for me, another misconception of self-love is it's all about bubble baths and candles, right?
Yes.
And
I
and
love a bath, but
yeah, but that's not but and that is really important because for a lot of people, right? That is part of their self-love routine. And if that is that for them, that's perfect. But behind that, there's going to be the deeper reasoning, right? So that's like their time to themselves. That's them valuing themselves. That's them knowing what they need and making the time out to have that. So for all I was a little bit flippant about that, I get what's behind it, which is where I'm talking about. I don't scratch on the surface. You know me, Terry. I'm not a scratch on the surface type of person. I'm like, right, let's get deep, let's get down, let's get dirty, let's find out what's really going on, cut the bullshit, and let's get there, right? Because that's where the change happens. When we can see the reality we're creating, when we can see the lens that we're looking through, when we can see the cycles we're repeating, when we've got that information, we can choose to do something different with it. And if we are in a relationship with ourselves, where we are like our own biggest damn critic, which a lot of us are, and we all are to a degree, right? It's normal and it's understandable when we realize why our brain's trying to keep us safe, but that's like huge long topic,
Yeah,
right?
that is a big one.
So, but our brain's trying to keep us safe in essence. So it's gonna like, if it says something like, so to keep you in danger, just go, oh, don't do that. You're not very good at that. Don't do that. Whether that's public speaking and like getting up and talking to somebody, whether it's coming on a damn podcast with your brain going, oh, you talk too fast, you're from the northeast of England, no one's going to understand you. What the hell are you doing that for? We all have it, right? And whether it's, doesn't matter what it is, right? Self-love is seeing the same cycles that we repeat, how we interact with ourselves. And we can have boundaries with ourselves. People don't even realize that they can have a self boundary, right? That's like a total
I'm not
like,
going to do
what
that to
the hell?
myself. I'm not going to go there.
People don't even realize they can do it. They can call themselves out on their own bullshit sometimes and go, wow, really? I'm going down that road again. Okay, what am I going to do differently? I don't need to go down that road. I'm calling my own bullshit out. We can have a boundary with ourselves. And if we're with somebody or spending time with somebody or interacting with somebody who's actually taking away more than they're giving, are we giving too much? Because we can say no, right? We don't have to say, oh, really, I'm absolutely tired. I could do with a night in, but my partner wants to go out for a meal. Yes, darling, let's go out for a meal. Or we've got friends who say, do you want to do this? Like, can you do this? Can you take me here? Can you do this? We can say no. And we can say no by saying yes to ourselves. Because saying yes to ourselves is self-love.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, for a lot of people, and dare I say it, especially women. We tend to, I don't know if if we're taught it or if it's just something natural that happens, but you kind of put other people before you because you want to be caring, you want to support people, and then we don't realize in ourselves. I think that's like what was really important for me to set that boundary. It's like, I'm not going to let my energy drop below this level. Just can't give when you're empty, can you? Well, you can
That's
give, in
it.
my case, a bit of, used to get really frustrated and angry or upset, or yeah, it's really
And
important.
that just drains you even more.
Yeah, and you
And
don't end up getting then the relationship that you would like if you're giving too much to it.
it's understandable why, as you say, especially women, it is understandable why women are predominantly, but not exclusively, the main people who do this, right? And if you think about it, we all have our own individual life scripts, and that's where we're going to be exploring a lot more of this as well, because I'm uncovering more and more and more about this. But we pick up the meanings of things when we're very, very young. Now, there's a good girl. You helped your mum do the dishes. There's a good girl. You helped your mum do this, or you did that, or you looked after your brother, or you looked after your friends. There's a good girl. We get praise from a very young age when we are in the helping role. Now, boys tend to get praise when they're doing boyish things. Well done, you scored that goal. Well done, you put yourself up there and you did that. So we learn different lessons from a very young age. So is it any wonder as we continue through our upbringing, the lives that we have, the experiences that we have, they get reinforced so much. At school, it's like, we're taught to be good, do the things that we should do your homework, do this, do that. Well done, you've done that well done. Praise, praise, praise for doing or giving and giving, right? If you turn around and said no to a parent, or you said no to a school teacher, especially from my era, because I'm really old, geez Louise, the bollocks that we were getting
I was
in
going to say, are
the
you old enough to like get the whipping that?
Oh, the canes were in my school. Yes, the canes were in my school, right? And the ruler, I remember that this one teacher was really heavy-handed with a ruler, long wooden ruler that she used to love getting over the kids' hands a lot of the time. I am that old. So
We don't look at you. Age is just a number, really. It's just more experience under your belt, isn't it?
it is, but tell my bones that. So, but no, but if you think about it, right? We live in this norm that giving, doing for others is good. We are reinforced with praise. throughout our life as women, the caregivers. It's just like expected in one way, shape, or form quite often. Not always, but quite often. So as we get into adulthood and then we get into relationships, and like the men are still doing the well done son role, right, for the man side, and the women are doing the caring, giving side. For all it's getting better now, there's still some of that generational teaching and beliefs and learnings being passed through.
Yeah.
And it can be really easy just to keep living that because you don't know any other. But you still know on some level that something's not right because our energy depletes, right? It actually having boundaries makes us more trustworthy because people know where you are. They might not like what you say, but they know you if you've got something to say that you'll say it.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a bad way, but in an honest and open way. People know that you won't just agree with them for the sake of it, so your opinions are valued. And we can learn to actually, first of all, find out what we want, because if we don't know, how the hell are we going to get it? And then to see what steps we need to take to do that. And it's going to feel uncomfortable and it's going to feel different because we're stepping out of our norm that we've known for so many years since we were very, very young, and that's supposedly kept us safe, even though it's going to quite often have the opposite effect, as we know. But it's still a known, and it's a well-worn path that we've walked since we were young, and we
Yeah,
need to
it's
look
more
at that differently.
beautiful, isn't it? At least than that great unknown of what happens if.
Yeah,
What happens
yeah,
if.
yeah.
You think having boundaries, well, there's two things there that's just pop, two ideas at once. It's like, which one wants to come out? There's something there that is about boundaries and intimacy. And then there's something about boundaries, you having boundaries that give other people permission to have boundaries. And I suppose then creating that intimacy. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to get at. Is that
And
are boundaries important for creating those proper deep relationships that we'd love to have?
I'd say they're essential. I say they are the backbone of our lives. That's how essential having boundaries is. When we've got good boundaries combined with good communication, that's when we build the foundations for strong and intimate relationships. Because as a woman or a man, right, who's going to put themselves out there and be really like open, honest, vulnerable, and deeply intimate with somebody that they don't feel can communicate with them, that they don't feel as being, they know there's something off, but they don't know what it is. Because if you haven't got boundaries, uh, trust me, your other person still knows something's not right in the relationship, right? Because our communication isn't just verbal, right? So that actually we hold each other back. We hold ourselves back, and we hold the other person holds back through that unwritten energy, right? That felt but unspoken energy. So that's why I say the boundaries with communication is so essential. And again, that can be really hard to start doing. That's why you start with little, you know me and my marble jar, right? I talk about the marble jar with things. So pop a small marble in the marble jar. Talk about something that's like not huge, you're massive, not on a scale of like 1 to 10 of your life, but build up the trust, build up the communication, put a bigger marble in the marble jar, put a couple of marbles in the marble jar. And the more that you see that trust's not broken, the more you can have those conversations and you listen as well as speak, because it's a two-way street, and both people to have the ultimate intimate explosively amazing relationship have to have that trust in each other, that they've both got each other's back, that they both want the same things, that they're both on the same page, and that even if they don't always want the exact same thing at the same time, they respect the other person where they're at the time as well.
Yeah, and it allows you to kind of have that freedom to move within a relationship without the control and the attachment and the fear creeping in.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
100%.
Is there something so I'm thinking about creating this intimate bond, right? And we maybe potentially get into caregiving roles for good reason, right? So for
Mhm.
example, I'm thinking like when people become parents, or when you get married and you've shifted, because essentially a marriage is a really fixed boundary, right? I mean, that's creating that. And so is becoming a parent. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously again there's always nuances where that's for people. But do those sort of roles affect your boundaries or how you show up in relationships and what love means then when you've changed that?
I would say so. I would say, and I don't just think it's parents, marriage, children. I think any major emotional event in your life can be a time to reassess, reconnect, and recommunicate.
Mm.
Because when you get married, you might be with somebody for a long period of time, and then before when you get married, it's like, where's my person gone, and who the hell are you? Because without even realizing, the other person stepped into their parent's role in a marriage, and
Oh,
it happens,
yeah.
right? And it happens, right? Totally invisibly, totally innocently, totally not with any malice intended whatsoever. But previously, the person that was like attentive and loving and was working for the relationship, when they've got it and the marriage is there, it's like, oh, okay, I'm fine.
Job
And
done. I've got my guy. I've got my girl.
feet up on the sofa, I don't need to do anything else, right? And that's when having those boundaries and those strong communication skills beforehand means your foundations are strong enough to have those conversations afterwards.
Are they more important than do you think boundaries when you have these emotional changes and events? Or is
I
that
think boundaries
removing
are
them?
important. There's never a time when boundaries aren't important. I'm sorry, but there's not, because boundaries come back to your core values, to what's
Yeah.
important to you. So it doesn't matter what the relationship, it doesn't matter what, and this is why I say yourself as well as others, because if you value truth, honesty, integrity, and then you're telling yourself a whole load of bullshit, where's that truth, honesty, and integrity going if you're believing it, right? So we can have boundaries with ourselves as well as others. And there's never a time when they're not relevant.
Yeah. And then that ripples out, I suppose, then with the wider world. You
100%.
can't say, oh, I value integrity or I value health, and then actually be supporting a company that's not integral, or
Exactly.
whatever
Exactly.
it might be. I couldn't even think of a good example there.
Well, it's like saying, health and fitness is really, really important to me, and you're smoking 50 cigarettes a week and drinking 20 pints a night. It's just like your words and your actions have to match up, right? And we don't all get it 100% right 100% of the time. I have times when my little brain goes, it calls me worse than shit, right? So, but I call myself out when I see it.
Yeah.
So we've all got to remember that we're also human beings, right? And we're going to mismatch our energy with ourselves and others at times as well. So it's not always about someone not listening. It's just maybe sometimes we pick the wrong time to communicate. But when we do what we say and we say what we do, right? When we come from a place of, this is who I am, this is what's important to me, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and that's it, right? And yes, the lanes might get a little bit moved, but they never get over. They're not like miles off. Then when other people talk about you, or if you're in business and you're putting something out there, that shines through. Who you are shines through, and people automatically know that they can trust you, or they can come and speak to you, or they can share their boundaries with you. And because it's like, if I say to you, right, Terry, my boundary is I don't work Saturday and Sunday because that time's with my daughter, right? And then you think to me, you want to messages, and it's like a Saturday, you're going to think, actually, she doesn't work on a Saturday, I'll speak to her on Monday. Or you'll send some message and go, come and talk on Monday,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm open and honest with that boundary, you don't see that as a bad thing. It's something that you automatically go, yeah, that's fair. I know where I stand, and that's what's important. When people have boundaries, we know where we stand with them.
Especially when you hold them, because then, like you say, I would know if I forget or send a message or something, and then I remember, because you've held your boundary. One, I know that you're trusting yourself, but then I know as well that it's not personal.
Exactly,
The
exactly,
miscommunication has that, because it's not about me. It's like I don't speak to anyone to do with work on those days. It's not about
exactly.
you. This is all about me and my daughter or my family or
Yeah,
whatever it is that's
yeah,
important, that's creating that boundary.
yeah. See? Now that's self-love. That's love for my partner. That's love for my family. That's love for you, or whoever my clients are, because everybody's in a safe space where they know And you don't have to go away, or a client doesn't have to go away and think, oh shit, have I spoken to her too many times? Have I done her head in? Is she thinking this? Is she thinking that? Is she thinking, sorry about my words, but what you say is what you get, right? But that's what it is, right? It's like it's creating a safe container for everybody, because as you say, it's not personal, so you don't need to go away, or anybody else doesn't need to go away and just think, and then send us 10 more messages apologizing for messaging me. That can happen as well
Yeah.
sometimes. I've had it happen. And it's just like, don't worry about it. It's like, I'll see you on Monday. That's
Yeah.
it. And then on Monday we
Later.
sort like, it's like, it's, and I'm saying to you because I'm talking to you, but it could be any client, because I've had lots of clients do this over the times. And it's just, I don't need to like, this is my boundary. I don't need to be like that with it. I just go, I'll see you on Monday. And then on Monday I go, remember, weekends are for my family. And that's it. That's how easy it can be to reinforce a boundary. People think reinforcing a boundary or putting a boundary in place has to be a big drama. And
Oh
it
gosh.
really doesn't.
I had this when I was first exploring boundaries in relationships, and I was seeing this guy. I kept saying, because I could tell, like I was wanting to be really upfront because I'm practicing this. I'm like, we should set boundaries, and he was like freaking out every time I said it. And I realized after, he thinks that setting boundaries is somehow making a commitment or getting really serious or all this. I could
Rules.
see the fear, and I'm thinking, and it took a while to figure that out. And then I realized, I said to him once, I says, do you know when I'm saying setting boundaries, I'm just saying what we like and what we don't like, and what we will and won't do and tolerate. And he's like, oh, right. And it just changed the whole like dynamic.
That's why I said boundaries have to come with communication.
Yeah, it's like they don't need to be a big deal. It's like it's part of the connection, isn't it? Of keeping the connection
It
and
really is.
making it
And
work.
and I tend to do a lot of things with humor, as you know, right? So I can be quite cheeky with my boundaries sometimes. I go, "Whoa, what do you think you would do?" But again, it's like there's no offense, there's no malice. It's because everybody knows what my boundaries are. In the specific relationship that I'm in, and people might go, "Yeah, but it's okay for you to do that, right? You can do it, but you're not in my situation, right? Because that's what we all tend to think at one time or another, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I grew up being told that my opinion meant nothing. I wasn't listened to. I don't know why I was speaking, because I had nothing to say. Just shut down. I was in really terribly abusive relationships, right? So I've been through all of that. And now I'm thinking, no more. Now I'm thinking, it's time to put me first. And I've been in a relationship for a lot of years since, even though I did leave him for in the middle of it, but we got back together, right? Because boundaries are broken, and this is important, because boundaries are broken, and I had to follow through with the consequences of if boundaries being broken, right? And if you're not prepared to follow through with them, then that other person knows that, and your boundaries don't get listened to sometimes if
Yeah.
it's not the right person, or if you haven't communicated them effectively.
It's like
So
you've got to
just
defend your boundary, but it doesn't have to be with all the guns. But actually,
don't
when
have to
if
go
it's
to
a
war.
non-negotiable, you do need to honour that, don't you?
Yeah, and you need to be able to explain why. And for all I left my husband, we were still, I see more of him when we were separated than I did when we were bloody living together, for crying out loud. Boundaries don't have to mean you don't have to go to war.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
rarely another person, that it happens, unfortunately, but the majority of the time people don't set out to try and hurt another person, or to try and deliberately cross and upset their boundaries, right? I don't wake up in the morning and think, how can I upset today? Right? Not many people do, but you know what? I do upset people sometimes, but it's never intentional, and I will go back and communicate and talk to them. That's how we first met.
I know this is brilliant. So Julie and I had just started kind of going back online and things and connecting with new people. And we ended up having like a disagreement, didn't we, on Facebook? Like you posted something and I just seen it and it was a bit triggering, and I responded, and then you responded, and then I responded, and then there was voice messages. And you know what? This is why I ended up right being like yes to Julie, because you know what? You showed up, We both acknowledged that there was this dynamic. We communicated, we respected each other's boundaries, and we followed through. And I thought, yeah, this woman knows boundaries. She'll say yes. And there we go.
We didn't agree with what each other was saying, but we were both prepared to listen to each other's point of view, say something different, and admit that because no one person's ever 100% right all the time, right?
No, because perspectives are always changing.
Yeah. So we did go backwards and forwards with a few bits. And it's
both exercise.
But it actually it actually created exactly what I'm talking about. That firm foundation of you know where you stand with somebody.
Yeah. I've just realized the time. I love doing these things. So I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just keep it half an hour for the radio show. And I don't know how long it is now, but it's definitely over half an hour. Right. Let's cut off. Julie and I are gonna finish our conversation over on the Love Food podcast, which is just for the Love School members. So thank you everyone listening on She Speaks. Thank you very much, Julie, for joining us. We're gonna go and have a bit of more of a deep dive. Is that all right?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, everybody. Right. Thanks.
Bye. See you on the next episode. Hello, Love School community. Julie and I are mid-chat. I don't know if you've caught us over on Love Fools and She Speaks. We've just finished, and now we are on your extended podcast, you special people.
You get the juicy stuff.
Yes, exactly. Let's get deep. Yes, what we were talking about actually. Where we ended was where we first met, wasn't it? On Facebook. That's probably quite a juicy thing, actually, because I never expected to talk about this, but actually, this was a really big thing for me. Was I'd spent quite a lot of time not on social media, and then came back on social media, connected with people, and on social media, right? So in the modern world, we're connected with so many people, aren't we? And then they've all got all different ideas, all different ways of communicating. And it can be a bit of a bloodbath, can't it, at times?
Definitely.
How to hold boundaries with random people online? That's probably a good one. Gosh.
You use the unfollow button a lot.
Yeah, that is a good one. I just unfriend people now. I mean, well, it depends. Sometimes I'll take a bit of a snooze from people if I find them, they're just triggering. But I know they're just triggering because of where I'm at. I'm quite good at identifying that. I'm like, are we just like have really different values here and we're just never going to be eye to eye? I've had a lot of practice. Or is this just where am I a bit vulnerable for their content right now?
Yeah, I think this is the importance of understanding where we're at. Because going back to the first time we met, right, I could see, because I often talk about these unwritten rules that we live by, that we have. I was talking about the life scripts that we create and the meanings that we make of things, and how we show up in the world and how we expect other people to show up in the world. And when they're crossed, when that's mismatched, it can cause us this miscommunication, right? And I remember when we first met, we were actually in a community together, right? We both joined the same community, and I was like following this community's sort of like guidelines of like of sharing stuff, right? And you'd commented on one or two of the posts, and in my mind, it wasn't the support that I expected, right? From a fellow person in the same community, because I thought, like, for God's sake, she knows where I'm going with this. She knows what I'm doing, right? She knows what's going on behind the scenes.
I think you said that as well, don't you? You know why I do this. You know what
I think I did, right? And I was just like, so we had this you were like, whatever I'd wrote, and I can't even remember what it was now, but whatever I'd wrote, you really disagreed with. And
it was about Vic being a victim.
That was it, yes.
Yeah.
And
It was, and like I say, it's funny because like I kind of like.
And I went
go into that now.
Well.
It was about being a victim, like you don't have to be a victim or something. And I was like, well, people get victimized, and I was right in that. Then I was really, really in that, coming to terms with being victimized and overcoming that, and you were trying to challenge that kind of stuckness.
Yeah.
So we were coming from it from completely different angles.
but with the same intention,
Huh?
actually. We just for that really short moment in time, we didn't see it because I was just like, "Whoa, you just broke all my unwritten rules!" Like you like if you and because it wasn't what you said, it was the fact that it was public. It was like, just get my message out and tell us all this. But again, that was like, I mean, and who was I to tell you that that's how you should be, right? So that was me totally in the wrong with that, right? Completely. And this is how it is. None of us get it right 100% of the time. Right? And I love that the interaction that we had has actually come to this. And as we said, as we finished off with the the last recording that we've done on She Speaks, like that's the importance of knowing ourselves and the foundation that we both know each other's integrity
Mhm.
and we both know each other's truth. And that's built a really solid foundation.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of created a space of trust,
Yeah.
mutual respect, and then
Yeah.
eventually, like we realized that we were both had the same goal. Like it was like we just had the same goal. We were just completely coming from different
Yeah.
ideas around it, and it was. I mean,
And we
that
both
was
thought we were right.
sorry.
And we both thought we were right.
Yeah, we both were right.
Exactly, we
We're
were.
both right.
Yeah.
We're both wrong.
Yeah.
No, but that's to be fair, right? With the whole social media world is quite an interesting one. It does affect people a lot, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
with their mental health, anxiety, and that's your kind of lane totally. But what I find because this might be a total tangent, but
Okay.
there's a quote, right? Oh, there's this. I think it's like this. I think it was a movie. I've not seen the movie, but a person realized that there's because we are a constant in our life, right? We are a constant, but we come in and out of other people's lives. So
Yeah.
there's like a version of Julie that I know, and then there's
Yeah.
a version of Julie that's completely different that Paul knows, and then there's a
Yeah.
version of
And then Katie that knows my
completely
in-laws
different
know
that
and friends. Yeah.
someone on social media knows.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't actually ever fully know each other. We just see snippets.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm because my character was just the way I am. If I see something and I feel like I see it as adding value, even if it's a contrast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that conflict, even
Yeah.
if I think, no, that's not like, have you thought about this way? Which I'm a bit better at communicating now, I think, than I was maybe then. A little bit.
Okay, so
Instead of like, you're wrong, have you thought of this? But I'll just challenge it. Like, and to be honest, I'm a Leo, and there's part of us that like I see that challenge, and I'm not like I say I'm not afraid of it. And so I'll just comment. I'll finish with sentence, and then that creates a contrast, especially for some people who are either not ready for that contrast, they're not used to somebody directly confronting them with that contrast, or just that or they don't know me, so I might have maybe like their posts or not commented on 10 posts, and
yeah.
then all of a sudden you comment on one, so they actually don't know you. Like on social
Yeah.
media we don't actually know each other, do we?
And that's what had happened. You'd liked a couple of my posts, but the couple that you'd commented on were actually like, no, you're wrong posts.
No, this is not right. If it's right, I'm like, yes, agreed, like, agreed,
There was a
like.
like on the grey and nothing said. And then there was a couple of them, and it was just like, but no, that's wrong because of this. And I'm like, okay. And so I was like, listen, if you had some discussions, and then there was this one, and it was just like,
Yeah, it kicked off.
and then it's just like, right, because I'm an addressed person as well. Like, so I'm just going to go and speak to you and tell you what's going on, right? So because I don't go around behind people's backs and do it, I'll say it to you. So that's exactly what we did. We went and had that conversation. But then I remember I deleted some of the voicemails because I remember they were really like they were unfair and they weren't right, and they were coming from a highly emotional place instead of a I was talking about victims, and then I was in victim mode as I was doing it, right? The importance of knowing yourself, right? And putting our hands up and admitting it. And that's what we did. Then you come back with yours and I come back with mine. And then we were actually starting to see that actually we're on the same page here. We're just seeing it from different perspectives. And what you've just said there about like there's a million different versions of me. There's a million different versions of you because every single person that knows you knows a different snippet of you. They know a snapshot of you in that time and place where they knew you from, where they made meaning about who you were from. And if it doesn't get updated, that just stays that in that mind. That's the Terri that they know, right? It's like a photograph, but in your mind, it's like a perception. And we all do that. And we could have done that with each other and just had, you know what, two women who are just too strong-willed and just too opinionated and who just aren't going to get on. And we both were big enough and open and honest enough to get past that by actually, let's talk, this other person's got something of value to say, let's hear it. And that's what we both recognize in each other, and that's what we both, that's why we're here now, isn't it? Because we both did that. But that's a really important thing to understand, that when we see somebody else and we're thinking that they're disagreeing with us, that's actually not on us, that's just where they are. When we can see that, and I'm big on taking the personal out of stuff, even though I did message you. I am big on taking the personal out of stuff when we see it, but we've got to see it to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it was a really good lesson, as are all your boundaries lessons. They have been, like I say, it's something I've had to explore and navigate a lot. So I'm really firm about my boundaries now, and I know where I can be flexible. And is that how we stay safe on it? Is that how we keep our continuation? Because you were talking about boundaries for yourself. Is that how we keep ourselves in our integrity? And then is that part of how we stay safe when we're interacting with other people, especially like online, where we're just a avatar, or we don't seem real?
I think so. I think because, again, it all comes back to knowing who we are, knowing what we value, and knowing what we will have and what we won't have. When we know that, and we know that strong enough that we don't have to go and like shut Facebook down because somebody has disagreed with something that we've said, or they might have, there's a saying that I say all the time, it's just don't feed the trolls, right? Don't feed the trolls. Because there are people, unfortunately, online who think where they are is that's right, and they think that their words don't have impact, and actually words do count and have impact. But when we're strong enough in who we are and what we will accept and what we won't accept, we can just delete somebody else's comment and continue with that and block them if we need to, right? For our own sanity, that's keeping us safe. Why do we need to let that energy into any of our spaces, be it an online space or a personal space? We get to choose who comes into our energy, who we give energy to. We get to choose. Now, there is always going to be people with stronger energy or with a different type of energy that are going to come and try and overpower. And this is why understanding what you want and what you don't want is so important. Because, like you say, boundaries doesn't have to be a wall, right? So if I go and post something on social media now and somebody else goes, "You bloody stupid cow, you talk too fast and nobody understands the word you say," I don't need to go and argue at that point. I just go and click on the person's profile, block, delete the comment. That's it. I don't need to let that influence my energy, because that's where they are. That's them. That's their stuff. But I also don't need to keep them in my space to give them the opportunity to do that again.
It's a great mirror. Like I do find that social media is a bit like that. It's like an echo chamber of our socials, how we behave socially. So for me, building my muscle on social media and dealing with any conflict or becoming more expressive, and like I say, learning I could unfriend or unfollow somebody or whatever it was, snooze them for a bit, and then they might come back in and see, oh, actually I don't mind this now, or like, actually no, like that. I've been able to then replicate it in the real world and make better relationships that way.
Practice makes perfect. The more when we start to be able to do it, it goes from becoming uncomfortable because it's like, will they know? Will they say? Will they guess? Do okay. We go through those steps because the way our brains are built to like stay in our lane that we know, right? Even if it's not comfortable, it still seems to be safer than the unknown. So when we do something different, it's like, should I have done that? And we give it more attention than we really need to. But the more we do it, the less attention we give it. And then, as you say, that translates out into when you see somebody doing that in your friendship group, you just think, whoa, win. Because you're already sort of like, It's like one of those magic eye pictures, you know, when you see the thing that's in it, you can't
Yeah,
unsee it.
I have a magic eye for ages.
Right? But you know what I mean? You know, when you look at it and then you can see the picture that's in it.
Uh-huh.
But like you could be standing staring at it for God knows how long and not see it. But once you've got it, you've got it.
Yeah.
That's how I see this as being.
Yeah.
Once you get when you
Great metaphor. That's a really great metaphor. It is. That is
yeah,
like,
and that's when it shows up, and that's when it's like, whoa, really? And then you can go and have a conversation with that friend, or you know, to say what's going on. You know? And I know you and I have had conversations about this at different with people that we know. You know, like people that I know, and just different things that have happened when I've been explaining and exploring this, and it just does come up, and you just think, oh right, need to have a conversation about this, and then we get to choose what we do with the information.
what about the nitty gritty stuff? Like, I love that you brought up. So I made a couple notes from the Love Fools chat. Um, so these life scripts, which
Yeah,
is part of my thing that I love, like deep diving
love
in
life
the shadow
scripts.
work, and gosh,
Yeah.
it goes deep. But
Mm-hmm.
and we've unpacked some of that together, haven't we? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking talking about things like the family behaviors that we take on,
Yeah.
these repeating cycles,
Yeah.
and then with them people, like that, to me that feels like the real kind of work, this entrenched learning. And then the
Mm-hmm.
people that taught us it, when we're evolving, we're learning
Mm-hmm.
all these new skills, but the people who had power over us, who taught us things, and not like it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be a dominating thing, but
No.
they taught us things that we now know aren't in our best interests.
Yeah.
And they might not even see it, but we do. We've got the magic eye picture now.
Yeah.
What about that? How does boundaries come into that, and how do we navigate those spaces?
So for me, that's when we have, and again, it's back to loving ourselves, right? Because we tend to pick up our first life script sort of thing by the ages of about 4, right? 4 to 5 years old. How we interact in the world, how other people interact in the world, how we decide how we should act, what money is, how a relationship should be, who we are, you know, whether we should be, what we should do. All of those things, all of those beliefs are formed around about then. Then they get updated as we go through life, continuously updated. Now, when we can say as adults that the things that we made meaning of actually weren't helpful, we've got a choice, and this is the important part. We've got the choice, because we can either go into blaming mode, right? And that's like, you should not have taught me that, that shouldn't have happened, da 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 da, and then we can focus all our energies onto that, which actually isn't a healing energy, isn't a freeing energy. It's an energy that keeps us wedded to that experience even harder and
Mm.
stronger, because we never get or very rarely do we get the resolve that we want when we're blaming. We never get that. It never gets resolved. We never get the I'm really
Defenses
sorry.
are up then, aren't
It
there?
doesn't happen, right? And again, when you go back a lot of the time, and I'm not making excuses for people, but depending on the situation, like, so let's just talk about money, because it's a reasonably one that a lot of people have some blocks around. If we picked up beliefs around the 4 or 5 year old that money was really hard to come by, that money was something that was really couldn't be spent, I wasn't worth having money spent on me, you know, I would just get the secondhand things. If we bring up and I get that belief, and it comes through life, it's hard to spend money on yourself. It's hard to think money's going to come. It's hard to find abundance in money because we grew up with that all the time. Now I can go down and blame parents for that, or I can look and go, where did they get that belief from? They got that belief when they were around their 4 year old from their parents. And then without even realizing, they lived from it as if it was truth, and then passed it on, not necessarily through direct words, because it's not always through direct words, through actions, through giving the secondhand clothes, by saying no to the ice cream man, and you know, all of those little things, and not just saying you're not worth it, but the meaning gets made from it is I'm not worth it. So we can look at the blaming, and the blaming just keeps us going around in that circle of unhappiness, of horrible feelings, of reliving the experiences and repeating the mistakes from it. That's it. That's what I found. We can look at, okay, this is the information that I've got. if I want to forgive and look at, okay, so they got their experiences and they were just passing the generational thing down the lineage of the years, then that's just something they didn't know any better. I do. I can be grateful I know better. I can forgive them. That's a personal choice. It can be an empowering one for some. And some people, when they're not quite ready, will feel it's disempowering because it doesn't feel congruent where they're at. Yeah. And we have to respect that. And if somebody's not at that stage, that's fine. But that doesn't stop them taking the third choice. And the third choice is they've got the new information. They've survived all of the shit that they got brought up with. What are they going to take from that information? We can replay that script in their mind when they were young. How do they want it working out instead? How do they expect it to work out? How would it ideally, in their ideal world, what would that situation be? And then take the learning from that and incorporate that as an adult. When they incorporate that as an adult, then that's like, depending on the subjects that we're talking about, and I know we're probably talking about different ones, but that's when we can say, I'm putting my boundaries in here. This isn't happening. We don't have to go back and give any forgiveness or have any understanding or go anywhere with anything with anybody, but we can still take the learning from it and move forward without keep it in the past, without keeping that cycle going, without keeping that. But we hate, the only person we hurt is ourselves.
So is it something that needs to be confronted, do you think, or you just ignore it, or is it a bit of both?
Like, I think it depends on what
a relationship with somebody, or if you want to keep that connection, but you're changing, it can be a challenge, can't it, to navigate that?
It can, and I don't think there's any right or wrong answer for that question. I think it depends on the individual circumstances and the individual relationship.
Yeah.
Because for, you know, like I could turn around, like I'm going to use my mum as a perfect experience. You know, we don't get on. I was a child she never wanted, and she taught me that at every opportunity and still does, right? Now I could, and I did spend a lot of years thinking, what the flip have I done? Jesus Christ, you know, that must be adopted. Nobody could dislike their own child that much, right? That's what I used to think when I was young. And then as I grew up, and it was just like, then there was the anger, then there was like, who the hell are you treating somebody so badly, right? And now there's the case of, that's your shit. I'm done with that. Yeah. Right? It's not that I can see where she's got it from her parents and going on to that. And I'm not really, I wouldn't say I was at the total forgiveness stage, but I'm certainly not, I can say it, it's there, it is what it is. I don't need to give it any more of my energy. However, if somebody tries to treat me in that same way that she did, right, that triggers that shadow, right, that's when I can go, well, do you know what? Been in that relationship before. I'm not going down there again.
Yeah, so they become your red flags in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
They become your, actually, I'm not accepting that. That's my boundary.
So then the person that you're with, that's, you know, help bring that up, or help show you that, because as you say, everything's a mirror, right? So it's externally what's going on internally. So if that comes up for us, we can either have that conversation with the person and go, whoa, do you know what? I'll accept our part in it. This is the important part of it. You know what? I've got this because I know I've had that. I respond badly to being spoken to in that way, or to having those words said to me. If we're going to move further forward, the language has to change, the communication has to change, the understanding has to change. And then when we've said that, the other person has their role in it. To be straight.
Yeah. So that's one of the things, right, that I find there can be a bit of a contrast, if you like, of advice, especially in the relationship kind of field. So there's some people that'll say, well, if you've seen a red flag, if you've seen that, it's like, get out of there. No, you don't carry on a relationship with somebody who's identified a red flag, who you've identified a red flag with. Yeah. Then what you're saying is look at the red flag, have that conversation.
Depends on the flag. If you're in any danger in any way, then it's non-negotiable. So again, that's about knowing yourself and knowing what's non-negotiable for you.
Oh, so maybe there's like amber flags.
I think there is. I think there is. I think you've got your different you've got your ones that are niggly, you know, so much just niggling at you. You just know it just feels uncomfortable. You don't like it. It's not right. You don't want to continue it. but it's not a get the hell out of Dodge flag,
Yeah.
right? So there are red, we
People's
categorize everything.
I think that's
Sorry?
really important. I think that's something like that's really important because I hear that a lot, like about I suppose that like the people talk about the red flags more in abusive situations
Mm-hmm,
or that sort
mm-hmm.
of thing. And like they are, non-negotiables, but there is an area, isn't it, as you're approaching a boundary that you can
You can
negotiate
discuss,
in.
yeah, you can communicate about, because that's, again, I'm coming from the premise that the person that you're in a relationship with wants to be in a relationship with you. They're not deliberately setting out to be an arse with you, right? They're not deliberately setting out to hurt you, or to try and trigger you, or try and if they are, then it is a red flag, right? That's when you've got to look at your non-negotiables and what are you prepared to do about it. And sometimes you need support to be prepared to take those actions. But if it's like just it's an argument, someone's been said something they didn't want to say and didn't really mean it, but it's triggered you and it's like brought that stuff up that's uncomfortable. Well, every relationship has arguments, right? Everyone says things they don't mean. You've said things that we didn't mean, but look where we got to with it. Do you know what I mean? It makes it sound like we had a really bad argument. We didn't. It wasn't like that, but we did have a bit of a difference of words. And I could have went into, nobody's going to disagree with me like that, and I could have just blocked you, or you could have done the same thing with me, right? But we didn't. So there's people are too quick to label everything as a red flag, right? If you feel uncomfortable about it, it's a red flag. Get out of there. And that's not always the case. There are definitely have to be non-negotiables where there's no room for, your safety is primarily, that's not under negotiability. But if it's just like getting to know somebody, if it's a miscommunication, then you can have a conversation. And if it repeats, then perhaps it goes into the non-negotiable.
Yeah. Because people change. They haven't like
Mm-hmm.
given people an opportunity to. Sometimes we don't even see ourselves doing. We can do things and we're not aware. And until you can bring that into someone's awareness and go, actually, I was really uncomfortable with that. I would rather you didn't do it, or I would rather we avoid this kind of situation, or
Yeah.
can we talk about this in a different kind of container? Whatever that kind of boundary is that you set. If someone doesn't know, they don't know it's there, do they? So once you've brought it to their attention, then they know. So then if they do it again, you know that they know, and they know
Yeah.
they know that they know, and you know that they know, and everyone knows that they know. So it's a different conversation then, isn't it?
And sometimes we don't even know ourselves. So that day you disagreed with me, I didn't realize I was going to be like triggered by that. You didn't realize you were going to be triggered by that by reading my post, right? It just happened. So sometimes we like this is why I call them invisible so much. We've got this invisible set of life scripts and invisible rules that we live by that we don't even know are there until somebody or something bumps up against them.
Yeah.
And this is when, like you say, if we don't know they're there, how the hell can we expect somebody else to know that they're there? This is why I keep saying boundaries with strong communication go hand in hand. And
Yeah.
this is why,
Sorry.
sorry?
No, go on, go on. Just agreeing with you, Julie. I'm like, yes, I noted that.
And the more we have our boundaries, and the more that in the relationship, we can trust the other person, and we can talk ourselves and have that communication. Then if it goes amiss somewhere, we both feel it because we both know that that's not normally how we communicate. It's okay, what's going on here? That could be like, oh, there's a little bell going along there. What's that? That's the amber one. What's going on? This needs a bit. Let's go and explore it. And
And then that's a skill as well, isn't it? So practicing holding your boundaries is a skill, but the communication, like that's really important. Everything from the language we use, our body language, um, all of that is kind of part of the skills that we can build.
and just to make it even more complicated, when we go back to our life scripts, like when we were like, so when I was like 4 years old, right? How I communicated with one parent was totally different to how I communicated with another, right? Totally different, very different, right? One, I was happy. One of them just didn't speak. The other one, I was like, oh, just my normal self, right? And so when we grew up, we've learned our communication skills from when we were young, and we've learned what responses we get, and we've learned our way of communicating. And the person that our partner or that we're communicating with learned a totally different way of doing it. So just because two ways are vastly different doesn't mean to say either one's right or either one's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to allow space and understanding and room to even like take on board that it's different communicating styles. It's not an immediate lack of respect if one person communicates differently to the other. Because if I could see how I communicate and interact differently with two parents, and we do it with different people that we're with, right? All the time. If I was to see one person now, I know I'd be very different compared if I come and see you now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it is. We've got different communicating styles depending on, you know, where we are and how we're feeling. So there's so much to take on board, which is why it's like, choose your times to have your communication. Right? Don't try and communicate in the middle of like, and this is a big one for a lot of couples that I work with and talk about, or even just one side of a couple that I work with. One person wants to talk when the other one doesn't.
Mm.
And that
Oh
actually
God, me and my
causes
ex all the time. That was such a
causes
big thing. Like,
mm-hmm.
I wanted to address things, and he was so like introverted and insular. He would be like, "Not now," and I'd be like,
I need time to process. Yeah.
When?
And that's it exactly. Now, is that a like, is that an amber flag that just says, okay, so you've both got to understand and take on board that you've got these different processing times and actually find a middle ground? Or is it like, you know what, this is just not going to work because they are just too different? Again, it's about checking in and seeing what you want and seeing what the rest of the relationship's like. But you're never going to get heard if the other person's closed.
Yes.
You're never going to get heard if you're shouting your head off like a banshee because the other person just closes their ears. You're never going to get heard if one person's really still angry or hurt or upset while the other person's trying to like, oh, let's just be friends. That doesn't work because you're going to get pushed away. Then that's going to set that cycle off again. And it's not that the other person hates you at that moment, which you know perhaps they do, but it's also a case of they're just different processing times. They need to find a level playing field. And I often advocate going out for a walk to have these conversations, because face to face with people just triggers. Walking side by side, you'd be surprised how easy it is to settle down, calm down, and be heard, and say your bit as well. So that's something I find quite useful.
Yeah, that's a nice one, because often we think about maybe having challenging conversations like that, don't you? Like looking at each other and seeing each other and in a container, like in a room or over a table or in a car, or you know, something really intense.
Then you wonder why it blows up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas just go for a nice walk and you've got all that space and your body's moving as well. So if emotions are coming up, the body's actually being able to filter them. You're breathing, which is a really big one, because these little things are all important for communication,
aren't they? 100%, yeah.
And you've got to be able to listen. Like that's what I was just picking up there. Like it's like so I mean my thing, like you want to be heard, you know what I mean? Like that was a big thing for me. I wanted to be heard, you know, I never felt heard and understood. So that was part of the reason I think why I used to have real things about wanting that to speak. But actually if somebody isn't receptive, if they're in their like process, communication is not just about talking, it's about listening, and it's about understanding and paying attention. So it does take that. It's an art, isn't it? It's like
it takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes practice, and it takes getting out of your own head, because so often when one person wants to make it quickly or one person wants to be heard and they feel like the other person's not listening to them or not hearing them, instead of looking at it from okay, they're not ready yet, it gets taken on if they don't care. And again, that's why you've got relationship complex, a bloody hard work, right? and that all relationships, and none of them are perfect. But this is why I keep coming back to the boundaries, because at least boundaries give you that set level. So if you've got a boundary of, you know what, if we've had an argument, we're going to wait 3 hours before we discuss it. You know, you can even put something like that in place if you know your process of the next day, or you know, whatever it is that's right for you. or we don't go to bed in an argument, then we'll both do whatever we've got to do to settle down, and then we'll discuss it before we go to bed. Whatever's right for you. But you can put things in place. And if at the end of the 3 hours the other person says, I'm still not ready, at least they've communicated that to you. And it's not a case of, I don't want to speak to you. It's just, I'm not ready. So as you said before, when you listen to the words that are used, it's important. But again, people using different words, language is the most liberating tool we've got, but it's also the most limiting tool that we've got, because quite often we can't find the words for how we're feeling in the moment. And when we're in that emotional state, and that the good old prefrontal cortex has been switched off because of all the adrenaline going around in the body, one person's already settled and come back online and the other person's still off, neurologically they're not able to engage. It's nothing about who you are or what you've done or the argument. It's about actually neurologically they're not in the processing stage being able to do that. It's taking the personal out of it and knowing your boundaries and knowing what's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just having that respect for our processes and the diversity of our processes. All of that. It's it can be really complex to create this simple little thing that we want, which is just a bit of harmony. Or
we can really overcomplicate stuff as well. Sometimes people want to go to the far end of a flipping sentence, and it's just like, oh, for God's sake, let that crap go, man. We both said things we didn't really mean. It wasn't the end of the world. It's not going to matter in 6 months' time. Let's go for a walk. But you want a cup of coffee? Do you know what it doesn't? Some people overanalyze and feel, and again, that's their learned, because they've learned that, they've watched parents do that, they've taught doing that with siblings, they've learned that in their script, right? And that's how they think. That's how they believe that relationships get resolved. But if their partner doesn't come from that same understanding, their partner just comes from a family that the arguments are never really talked about the next day, sort of thing, and were never addressed, then you've got two very different styles, and that's going to take some working through. But sometimes it's like a case of, let's just let that bit go, have a cup of coffee, and talk about it in a couple of days' time, even, because you can still be heard. And things can still be taken on board. They don't have to be done straight away after an argument, or things don't have to be resolved straight away with the intensity that we give things quite often, because that just keeps them coming up.
Especially once your nervous system's kicked in,
Yeah.
And sometimes, you just need. Sometimes you get information coming in if you've had an interaction with somebody, and it just needs to filter through. So actually, your instant response might not be your response.
Very rarely is.
You know what I mean? That was just a reaction, and then it's like, well, actually, if I really think about what you've said, I need this to settle through us and see how I feel and think about it or whatever, and then I can respond.
Yeah.
And
there's not one of us
in between while I'm thinking about that, or maybe it's not. Depends. It depends what the issue is, doesn't it? So
there's not one of us who at one time in our life has not thought, what did I do that for? What did I say that for? Why did I say that? Not one of us. We've all responded and had that knee-jerk reaction. And even when we do have that knee-jerk reaction, we don't have to beat ourselves up over it. We can let it go. We don't all have to put more wood on top of that fire either. Right? We can let it burn out, let the energy of that burn out as well.
There's a lot.
It's been a good call, hasn't it?
Well, sorry. What did you say?
Yeah, this has been a lovely chat, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, I love chatting with you. Yeah, learning to apologize is an important one. I think depending on the dynamics, because one of the things I had to unpack was this thing about being wrong, right? You don't want to be wrong, and if you apologize, you're kind of admitting you're wrong. So it was like, and my family just never apologized to each other. They never ever apologize, even some really shitty things. They just never apologize, and that's something I've really had to practice and get used to. Because actually, I'm like, well, I don't mind apologizing. I don't mind being wrong. When I really thought about that, I don't mind if I'm wrong. And I'm bothered if I've hurt you, if I've said something out of line, if I've crossed a boundary, if I've hurt you, I'm bothered. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, actually, I want to apologize. Like, apologizing is a good thing to me. So I'm like happy to take responsibility there. But like I say, we learn all these scripts,
Hmm.
and they become, and we do them, and we don't even think, we don't even question
No.
why. That was a proper journey for me. Like, I love looking at words and what they mean and the associations.
Hmm.
I think it was, we've had conversations before about like the filter
Yeah.
you put through
Yeah. Hmm.
certain words. So you might say one, like you say cat, and you're going to imagine a certain
Hmm.
kind of cat, which is very different to mine, because your
Yeah.
cat's got no hair and my cat is really fluffy. Do
Exactly.
you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
still, they're still
100%.
cats. We're both
If we
still
say to
imagining
people
a cat.
now, think of a car, everybody listening to this is going to go to what their car looks like, or a chair, the chair that they're sitting on, or that's close to them. And that's the way that we filter things through. So it's a good thing because it's how we learn. So we don't have to like relearn a chair every time we say a different type of chair, or we don't have to relearn what a cat is every time we say a different type of cat, right? It's it's the way that we work and the way that we process and the way that we understand. I had an ex whose apology used to be a cup of coffee.
That's a code.
Seriously, every time we'd have an argument, instead of coming and saying, I'm sorry, make me a cup of coffee.
Did you
And
accept that apology?
depends on where I was at the time. Sometimes I didn't, sometimes I didn't.
Take it back.
Sometimes it just got cold.
Sorry, I can see the dynamic now. Is that you didn't drink your coffee? No. Yeah.
And again, it's different communicating styles, different communicating ways. You know, this person had it that they weren't a man if they apologized because that's what they'd learned. You know, men don't apologize. Men do this, that, and other shit, quite frankly. But you know, that's what they learned, and unfortunately, so did that ex. Cost them a lot of learning.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason, isn't there?
Yeah, and we're all doing the best that we can with what we know at the time. When we know more, we can do more.
Yes. I mean, and that's really, I mean, that takes it right back to the heart then, doesn't it? Because we all know we have to grow. We're
Yeah,
not born like knowing all these things, all these skills, and it's our experiences that shape us, whether they're positive, whether they're negative, whatever it is, that shape our responses. And all we can do is just navigate them. Like, I could have an experience today that changes my whole perception tomorrow, and that means I've got to adjust to the next conversation I have and the next conversation I have. And I think we forget that about each other, and about, especially in relationship.
and we also forget that it's not just what happens to us because the same thing happens to a lot of people, but the meaning that gets made of it and what we do with that knowledge is different.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you know, some people who perhaps had the upbringing that I had might have quite easily turned to drink or drugs, quite easily, right? And I know people that did, and yet not my cup of tea. Never, it's not my cup of tea. And I went on and I come into the let's help others who've been through the same rubbish path, right? That's where I went. And you see this happening in the countries where they've got the like the tsunamis and the earthquakes and things like that. And you see people actually being the most resilient that they've ever been in their life, that you were thinking about, that you would think you couldn't get through. We see people who get through daily things that if you thought about it, you would never think you could get through.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got our scripts, we've got our meaning making, but we've always also got our own character and our own resilience and our own strength that we've got. But sometimes we forget that we've got it. But it's all, and this is back to the our mental health rocks and having the well-being, and we've got that ability to keep going no matter what happens.
Oh, we have, haven't we?
And we might not like it.
Amazing. That's why we've evolved to be one of the most successful species on the planet. Like, we are adaptive and resilient, and we will bend, 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 bend. So
And we
it is very difficult to break people. But then at the same time, like, this is where I love the contrast. We can't bend and bend and bend, but you know, sometimes if you do just feel like you need to stop or take a break, or you feel a bit broken,
stop.
acknowledge it.
Yeah. And you can feel broken, right? We can all feel broken at times. However, when we tend to change the situation that's making us feel that way, we find out that we weren't broken. We were just in a shit situation, right?
That's the power, isn't it? That's the power.
When we change what's going on, the environment or the thinking or the thought processes or the meaning that we're making, when there's a change, that's when we see that we weren't broken. We were just in that vortex of crap. Right?
We're just bent in a way too uncomfortable position for too long. Like,
yeah, and we just couldn't see any other way out of it at that particular time. But again, people listening to this, how many people have been in a relationship or done things or had things happen in their lives and they look back and just think, wow, did I put up for so long? Right? And then when you're out of it, it's like, why did I do that for so long? Why did I stay there for so long? Why was I, why did I beat myself up for that for so long? Whatever the reason it is. Because when we get those fresh eyes, we realize that, you know what, we're not broken. We're a lot more capable, able, and stronger than we realize. And sometimes we all need a little bit of help to get there. And that's why, like, Love School is the perfect thing, because it gives you that little bit of help if you're feeling a bit stuck.
Yeah.
It gives you that support without actually telling you what you need to do. It's like helping you figure it out and navigate it with support for yourself.
Yeah, because I genuinely think, like, we've got this antenna that wants us to do well. And even if people are well-meaning and they're trying to tell us what to do or this is helpful, not everything is helpful at that time. And if we can tap in and follow our own guidance out, that's way more powerful than being dragged out of a situation, Sometimes we maybe do need to be dragged out of a situation, who knows? But actually finding our way out and going through that experience, you've got all of that wisdom and that self-trust then.
And if we go back to what you were saying at the beginning of this call, when like everybody only has a snapshot of us, people that are trying to help you are only doing it from their snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
So, for all the help that they give might be really useful. It's also limited because you have to either bring more or put more in for yourself, right? It all comes back down to we're the only person that can change the life that, but we are the person that can change the life that we're living.
Yep.
We just got to choose to do it and love ourselves enough to do it. And it doesn't have to be like drastic changes overnight, right? Mount Everest, as I keep saying, Everest wasn't climbed in one step, but lots of little steps are going to get you where you want to be. You just got to take that first step.
Definitely. We'll end it there because I know you've got stuff to do. Hasn't the time just flown?
Isn't it always?
But thank you. What a lush chat. There's been loads of value in that, and it's been really nice to just unpack some of your ideas a little bit more. And I know it's going to be really, really helpful for people who are exploring boundaries and relationships and more self-love as well. Yeah.
I think that's correct, hopefully.
Right, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Fools, where we have been exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you as part of Love School, where we explore what it means to love self, others, and everything. For more information, come and have a look at our site, www.loveschool.uk.